Well, incumbent New York City Mayor Eric Adams is doing all he can to appeal to white conservatives. Expect to see more of this. He was on Fox and Friends this morning as they were operating as campaign surrogates for Eric Adams. Listen to this.
Mr. Mayor, it's not just defund the police, this candidate, Democratic Socialist. He wants to freeze the rent. He wants city-run grocery stores, social workers to replace the police because that's going to help. He wants $60 billion of debt fund for affordable housing. He wants free buses, no cost for childcare, baby baskets for newborn, and a $30 minimum wage. How can someone vote for this?
He's a snake oil salesman. Mm-hmm. He will say and do anything to get elected. Think about this for a moment. He wants to raise 1%. He wants to raise tax on 1% of New Yorkers' high-income earners. As the mayor, you don't have the authority to do that. You know who has the authority to do that? An assemblyman, which he is. He wants to do free buses. He could have done it at assemblyman. He doesn't understand the power of government and how you must making sure you improve your economy, raise the standard of living, and this is what we've done in the city. And I'm looking forward to being on the campaign trail and showing New Yorkers we can't go backwards. And New Yorkers never surrender or quit. I'm never going to quit for the city that I love.
That is so interesting. You're in the position, so you know you don't have the authority to do that. Yet he's running on all these promises he's not going to be able to fulfill.
Here's, to me, what I find to be interesting. Lawrence B. Jones, who is absolutely not one of the brightest bulb in a dark room, okay? He goes, matter of fact, I just want to listen to this again, y'all. Listen to this.
Mr. Mayor, it's not just defund the police, this candidate, Democratic Socialist. He wants to freeze the rent. He wants city-run grocery stores, social workers to replace the police because that's going to help. He wants $60 billion of debt fund for affordable housing. He wants free buses, no cost for childcare, baby baskets for newborn, and a $30 minimum wage. How can someone vote for this?
How about they did? See, this is what I find to be absolutely stupid. All of these people are angry and upset because people actually voted. So let me just remind you how this works. You announce you run for office. You declare your candidacy. You launch it. You campaign. Election day, people vote. So you're mad they actually voted in the primary. Well, guess what? People then are going to have an opportunity to vote in the general election in November 4th. I can't stand these MAGA people. But guess what? They voted. Other people sat on the couch, they didn't vote. Let me explain to y'all how this works. If you get more votes than the other person, you win. And if that person's people vote and your people don't, then you don't have a chance at winning. The crazy thing to me, Rebecca, they're mad that people voted the way they wanted to vote. I don't live in New York City. I pop in, I pop out. I got no interest in living in New York City. Too many rats, too much trash. It ain't me. Also, I like grass. I ain't trying to see all that concrete, okay? That's just me, all right? But they voted. So clearly there was something a lot of people liked about Mamdani.
For anyone in the audience, if you've been to New York City lately, or even been to New York City in the last 20 years, it's expensive. And people who live in New York, there's a few things that they want. They want affordable housing. They want affordable childcare. They want affordable transportation. They want to actually be able to work and live within an hour of where they work and live instead of having hours-long commute because they can't afford to live in the city in which they work. I mean, that's the Working Families Party platform. Shout out to my friend Maurice Mitchell. Working Families Party, they had a clean slate last night, all up and down New York State. And so this really shows that Eric Adams is extremely out of touch. Maybe it's because he's really been living in New Jersey, which came out when he ran the first time, is that people want to actually afford to live in New York. When we look at certain cities like San Francisco and see that a lot of people have had to flee the city because they can no longer afford it, you know, New York is also one of those cities that's teetering there. And, you know, a lot of people who are in New York City, they don't want to be displaced because we remember, what was it, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, there was the black guy who ran on the platform of the rent is too damn high.
Yep.
I think that was the party that he ran on, that he was a part of. It's expensive. There should be nowhere in the United States where people are going hungry, they can't find a place to live, they can't have affordable childcare, they can't afford to live. That should not be America. But what we're seeing right now, that has become America. So even for Eric Adams and Fox and Friends to push back on the quote unquote socialist agenda, it's because capitalism really isn't working for a lot of people in this country. It's becoming the American nightmare, not the American dream.
You know, Tom Suozzi, congressman, put this tweet out. I had to respond. I had serious concerns about Assemblyman Mamdani before yesterday, and that is one of the reasons I endorsed his opponent. Those concerns remain. And I went, and the voters voted.
Exactly, Roland. I think it reveals something deeper about how power reacts when it's no longer in control. Just said New York City voters, especially young, working class, and communities of color, they chose their candidate who reflected their realities, which was housing justice, transit equity, anti-policing platforms. We talk about how ICE is invading the city. But when those candidates win, as we see here clearly, political establishments and media don't call it democracy. They call it chaos. And I think what we saw here was people they voted for themselves, and that's what democracy looks like. Democracy looks like when people go out and vote their interests. And the outrage isn't about voter turnout or misinformation. It's really about finally showing up and shifting the narrative, and that's exactly what the candidate did in yesterday's election. So,
Robert, Larry Summers, who was the former president of Harvard, he worked for Obama, one of his over economic advisors, whatever the hell he did. Okay, I don't know what the hell he did. So this was his tweet. I am profoundly alarmed about the future of the DNC and the country by yesterday's New York City anointment of a candidate who failed to disavow, quote, a globalized the intifada slogan and advocated Trotskyite economic policies. I fear it is evidence that our party is following the most problematic aspects of Britain's Labour Party. It didn't work there and it won't work here. Harvard and other universities' moral weakness after October 7th in condoning hateful anti-Israeli and even anti-Semitic rhetoric and activity opened the Overton window in ways that contributed to yesterday's outcome. I hope candidate Mamdani, who showed great ability to learn and adapt during this campaign, will continue to evolve in ways that provide much needed reassurance to people committed to a free from prejudice market economy as an American ideal. An important task for Mamdani now is to provide reassurance that his moral energy and formidable political skills can be productively directed for the city of New York at this difficult moment. What a bullshit ass statement. First of all, like I said, Robert, him winning a primary ain't got a damn thing to do with the DNC. It ain't got a damn thing to do with anybody else running anywhere in the country. Again, just as a reminder to the people who forgot, this sister here, socialist India Walton, she won the primary in Buffalo. The world didn't end. They targeted her, ran against her. She lost in the general. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Mamdani. He may win in November. And if he does, that means the voters actually chose him. So Larry Summers, go kick rocks.
Look, this is the empire striking back, and we see this every time there's these insurgent candidates. The establishment of both parties, actually, but we're talking about the Democrats right now. The establishment decides, well, this might be a little bit too hot water for the rest of us. So we saw this with Cori Bush. We saw this with Jamal Bowman. We saw this with Nina Turner. We see this in election after election. They always say that we want the candidate of hope and change. What they really are talking about is just the status quo that benefits our rich people the most. And until we can get out of that, we are losing an entire generation. You know this as well as I do. Nearly to a person, the black MAGAs that you see today, if you picture them in college, if you find a picture of them from 2007, 2008, they have Obama shirts on. You know, they were at the marches, they were at the rallies, they were the hope and change generation. And when they did not see that hope, they did not see that change, they became disillusioned with politics. And then they started looking for somebody who was actually going to shake up the two-party system, and they settled on Trump. Do they agree with him on policy? He ain't got no damn policy. There's nothing to agree with. And Democrats have to learn you can't keep cutting off the next generation to support the status quo as it exists right now, because you're going to lose in the marketplace of ideas. I'm glad that Larry Summers mentioned the Labour Party in Europe or in Great Britain, because after 14 years of Tory rule, we saw Labour under Keir Starmer take over on a progressive message. It wasn't just Labour, it was Labour, the Lib Dems, the Greens. They all took party above the Tories because they had to splinter into Reform UK because their conservative movement had their own MAGA movement inside of it. The point being that if you look at that European corollary to American politics, it tells us we need to be bolder, we need to be stronger, that in the face of fascism, as we're seeing in France and in Italy and in Belarus around the continent, it takes strong candidates willing to stand up for real values. And that's what this election is telling us. We need people who actually have a voice and who aren't afraid of the money.
Again, if you don't like them, try to beat them. That's called democracy.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.